Is Pep really a genius? Or just a bald fraud? And how do you even begin to measure that? To find out, we built a model, pitting science against the meme, and ran it on a lineup of football's baldest tacticians. For now, let's rewind for a sec and ask ourselves the question, what even is a bald fraud? Well, according to the internet's most trusted source, a bald fraud is a manager who underperforms, plays ugly football and loses key games. However, we're going even further. A true bald fraud also struggles in two key areas, against his shampoo-less counterparts and against the mirror every single morning, because the balder you are, the stronger your claim to the title of ultimate bald fraud. So, let's dive in. Who underperforms the most? Statistically, and perhaps surprisingly, it's hard to look past Pep. With a whopping net spend of 1.39 billion euros, leading to a total of 1,417 points in domestic league matches, he spends about 980,000 euros per point, by far the most of any manager. Not too shocking really, when more than 20 of his signings cost 50 million euros or over. In fact, Pep holds the record for the largest spending spree by a bald manager in a single season, 280 million euros in 2017-18. However, when you've got the money, why not spend it? And with the level of success he's had, winning 25 major trophies, including 12 league titles and 3 Champions Leagues, it's hard to imagine anyone complaining. The same can't be said for the manager in 5th place. While his time at Ajax was very impressive, his stint in England was a complete disaster, with a transfer spend per point almost 3 times higher than Pep's career average. When your big money signings include Antony, Højlund, Mount and Onana, well, it's not hard to see why. And it's about to get even worse for all the Man United fans out there. Why? Because this is a Dutchman that you could have had, Arne Slot. He offers the best value for money of any manager, just edging out Enzo Maresca. Of course, these two were always going to do well using this metric, as they are the only managers with a negative net spend. But let's be fair, you have to give Slot some credit. Winning the Premier League while spending just 12 million euros, very impressive. Points aren't the only way to measure performance. What about major trophies? Here, Sarri underperforms the most, with each major trophy costing 131 million euros on average. Why is this number so high? Well, because sadly for him, he's only won 2. Using this metric, Pep does slightly better than before, placing 3rd, with each one of his 25 major trophies costing 55 million euros on average. Further down we have Allegri at 49 million euros, with the vast majority of his trophies coming during his first stint at Juventus. Again, the 2 best performing managers are Arne Slot and Enzo Maresca. Both have won major trophies despite their negative net spend. Sorry again, Man United fans. Finally, underperforming managers don't tend to last the season. But who fares worst when it comes to mid-season departures? Well, that title goes to Allegri, being sacked in 17% of seasons that we considered, at AC Milan and Juventus. Although you could say he was treated a little harshly by Juventus, having been sacked just 2 days after winning the Coppa Italia, largely due to his outbursts during the match. Benitez at Inter Milan, Real Madrid and Everton, Dyche at Burnley and Everton, and Ten Hag at Man United come next. And then there's Sarri, a perfectionist YouTuber's nightmare, an edge case. He's the reason this segment is called mid-season departures instead of simply just sackings. Ugh. Instead of being given the boot, he gave the boot to himself. That puts him at joint 4th on our list. You can't really blame him for resigning. Just look at him. When it comes to all of the other managers, none of them have had a mid-season departure yet. Now, on to our next factor. Just who plays the ugliest football? Of course, it's a tricky one to quantify, especially with limited data. Therefore, we decided to keep it simple and use goals scored per game as a proxy. The more goals you score, the more beautiful your football is. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it gives us a rough idea. And it's no surprise who fares the worst here. Dyche, Benitez and Allegri, all three largely seen as defensive-minded managers. It's a bit unfair on Dyche. He's never had that much cash to splash on attacking talent. But let's be honest, we all know what the man truly thinks of possession-style football. Moving on, Slot again does exceptionally well, whilst the two most beautiful playstyles belong to Ten Hag and Pep. For our third factor, we're asking ourselves the question, just who is the biggest bottler? Let's start with those big European nights, quarter-finals and beyond. With 3 out of 4 big European games lost, including 1 Champions League semi-final and 2 Europa League quarter-finals, Ten Hag takes the crown. Well, it's no wonder really. That's what losing to Spurs in a Champions League semi-final does to a man. In second place we have Allegri, who's lost 2 Champions League finals. Ouch! To add to that, he's also had a series of early-ish exits, which haven't done him any favours here. Arne Slot has been doing really well so far, but sadly for him, he's third, losing 50% of his big European games, including a Conference League final. Next comes Pep, and one of the reasons the meme exists in the first place. In general, he's got a pretty decent record, losing 39% of his big European games. However, his run of 3 quarter-final losses to Liverpool, Tottenham and Lyon helped fuel those bald fraud accusations, and that doesn't even include his last 16 loss against Monaco in 2017. As for the mentality monsters, it's no surprise that Zidane is right up there, winning 10 of his 11 big European games, with 3 of those being Champions League finals. However, he's beaten by 2 managers who have never lost a big European game, Maresca and Sarri. Yeah, we know this is a little unfair on Zidane, as he's managed many more big European games than the other 2, but that's just the nature of our model. We prioritise simplicity over capturing every last detail. How about looking at major European and domestic finals instead? This time we've got a tie, as Slot and Sarri share the prize of biggest bottler, both losing 2 out of 3 of their major finals. Interestingly, it could have very easily been oh so different for Sarri, as both of his losses came via a penalty shootout. Allegri comes next, largely due to his record in European finals, as he fares extremely well in domestic finals. Further down the list, we've got Benitez, who should be pretty happy with his record, winning 5 of his 7 finals, including 3 in Europe. Pep also deserves a lot of credit, winning 13 of his 17. But there's no beating Maresca and Zidane, who both have never lost a major final. Next, let's look at each manager's head-to-head record. Here, Kompany fares the worst, losing every matchup that he's been involved in. In fairness to him, all of those matchups did take place during his time at Burnley. Not exactly shocking, is it? Although the next manager doesn't have the same excuse, Benitez. He loses to 3 out of 4 members of the follically challenged members club, only beating the guy who, you guessed it, managed Burnley, who in turn finishes third. Further down we have Sarri, who along with Slot loses 50% of his matchups. One of those matchups is against Allegri, the most common head-to-head in our study at 19 matches, although, sadly for Sarri, he's only won 4 of them. Ten Hag, Maresca and Zidane all do pretty well, but there's no beating Pep. Having managed against everyone else, he's only lost to 1. Maybe he's not a bald fraud after all. Let's move on to our last factor. Just who is the baldest of them all? To find out, we collected photos of each manager taken at different stages during their career and ran them through a machine learning model. The model is able to identify a variety of different facial features within an image, allowing us to calculate the level of baldness present. The baldness score for each manager is then calculated using a simple average. So what does a model say? Well, Company, Maresca, Slot, Ten Hag and Zidane are all, sorry to say, perfectly bald. Just behind them are Pep and Dyche, both of whom score above 90% on the baldness scale. To be fair, Dyche may have been a little hard done by yet again. His light ginger hair can easily blend in with his skin, potentially confusing the model. Benitez, Sarri and Allegri are the least bald, and it's not hard to see why. Look at all that hair. Damn, what happened? So, those are the factors. Okay, but what does all of this actually mean? Just who is the ultimate bald fraud? To find out, a score per factor was calculated for each manager. This score ranges from 0 to 1, where 1 represents peak fraudulence. These scores can then be combined to answer that all-important question. Let's take a look at Allegri as an example. To help visualize, we'll plot what's known as a radar chart, consisting of 5 dimensions, 1 for each factor. In essence, the more red you see, the more of a fraud they are. Sadly for Allegri, there's quite a lot of red here, especially when it comes to underperformance. Let's take a quick look at the other managers. Feel free to pause to take in more info. So, we can now see who the bald frauds actually are. Allegri, Benitez, Dyche, Company and Sarri, as our plots have the largest amount of red present. But which one is the ultimate bald fraud? Well, combining each manager's scores into one, it turns out it's Dyche. Just like the other bald frauds, he does mediocre to poor across the board. In his case, especially bad when it comes to quality of football. However, he only just takes the crown from Allegri, who is a lucky man that he actually had hair earlier on in his career. In third, we have Benitez, whose plot shares a striking resemblance to Dyche's, the only major difference being quality of football, where Benitez fares far better. What about those managers who the meme treats unfairly? Bald geniuses do exist, right? Well, according to our model, the ultimate bald genius is Zidane, closely followed by Maresca. These two also have extremely similar plots, doing well across most of our categories, except the obvious one, of course. Interestingly, Maresca may have actually taken the crown for himself if it weren't for his comparatively poor quality of football. Pep's in third. Turns out he's not a bald fraud after all. Let's be honest, both his quality of football and head-to-head record are exemplary. However, it's a distant third. In fact, he was very nearly beaten into that podium spot by Arne Slot, who has quite an interesting plot himself. Exceptional in 2 categories, decent in 1, and downright disastrous in another. That said, we should cut him some slack on his performance in key games, since the sample size is quite small. Just for fun, let's take a quick look at the worst managerial stints. Rafa Benitez, you might want to look away now, as 2 of your stints make it into the top 3. Funnily enough, these stints at Everton and Inter Milan are remarkably similar. The only difference being that his time at Everton featured a slightly lower quality of football compared to his time at Inter. Despite winning 2 trophies, Ten Hag's stint at Man United also makes the podium. Not a surprise really, given the extent to which he underperformed and how poor the quality of football was. So, there you have it. To answer that all-important question, Pep isn't actually a bald fraud. Sorry, football meme lovers, but a bald genius. The real ultimate bald frauds are Dyche and Allegri. What do you think? Do you agree? Or is there another manager who deserves the title of ultimate bald fraud instead? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you.